with the VT community and the myopia control community. So you have these two groups. We're the myopia control community, and then there's the COVD vision therapy docs. And this started originally with a post by Nate Benia-Warford, who's been a guest on this show. And he was talking about how these two communities are starting to come together and what that means and how we don't communicate with each other and why that's a bad thing. Paul, I was wondering if you could give us like a brief overview of that whole dynamic, because it's been in two different places and I've been trying to pay attention to it in both of those places. But maybe you could help give us a starting summary.
Well, we all have different, we all have different passions. We all have different things that we're excited about. And, and there's a team approach to eye care and patient care in general. And a lot of things get ignored. So for instance, you might be digging into myopia control, but you're maybe leaving a lot of the binocular vision and functional vision things that you might be picking up. You're kind of leaving those off to the side a little bit. Maybe the vision therapy docs are dealing with highly myopic, progressive myopic kids who have, convergence insufficiency and reading vision problems, and that's what they're focusing on and letting the myopia kind of grow out of control. So because it's not, their forte necessarily. So I think the melding of two different specialties, I think ultimately is in the best interest of the patient, because what we're really talking about is function. Even with myopia, myopia and high myopia causes dysfunction, and binocular vision disorders cause dysfunction, and one may lead to the other. So, for instance, if somebody is, let's just say, very, very, maybe anisometropic, and they're, a -5 in one eye and a -1 in the other eye, well, they're going to be a binocular vision, problem, because they're not going to do very well using their eyes together. That's a perfect case where you might use Ortho-K to bring those eyes back to plano, or 20/20 in each eye, and then back to the vision therapy doc to work on those functional deficits and those convergence problems and focusing dysfunctions. I think there's a tremendous opportunity there to take a holistic and global approach to our patients, whether we want to be the myopia control experts and the vision therapy docs, which some of our members do, or you want to have a network of doctors that you can refer back and forth to. Like, I've got an Ortho-K kid who's got, poor binocularity. I'm sending him to you for that. I got a vision therapy doc that's sending me a patient because, they feel that, let's get rid of the glasses altogether, and then we can deal a little bit easier with the binocular vision anomalies. So if we put those two, and we're similar in that we both represent sort of smaller corners of our industry, and we both have to deal with the fact that, sometimes it's our own people that disparage what we do. It's ODs against ODs, sometimes that are the worst culprits, telling us that myopia control doesn't work and Ortho-K is a hoax, and what are you all doing? And vision therapy is just a way to extract money out of your patients' wallets. Like, this is the stuff that we hear. And so banding together just makes us stronger, even if we do slightly different things. So, I do see it as a natural symbiotic relationship that we should be engaging more into.
Yeah, my question is basically, how much overlap is there? Because this whole kind of issue goes back for us. Originally, when we started Vision by Design, it was in the fall, and we got a lot of feedback from our members who were members of both groups. And they said, you're making it really difficult for us to go to both the myopia control meeting and the vision therapy meeting. And so we ultimately moved to a different time frame in the spring And then lo and behold, so that we would no longer conflict. And then lo and behold, COVD ended up moving into that time frame as well. And now we're like stepping on each other's feet constantly with both meetings, just trying to stay out of each other's way. And I've read a lot about the possibility of doing a shared meeting of vision therapy and myopia control. And Jonathan, maybe you can weigh in on this for this next question, is that, and because all of you have a role to play in Vision by Design and have been going for years. And from my perspective as an organizer, I'm not an optometrist, so I'm an outside entity on this whole conversation. But from my opinion, I think Vision by Design should stay Vision by Design because of what it is. And I am, but is that the answer? Like, I don't want to hold things back. Like, should we be combining these two meetings?
Well, my personal opinion, I have kind of an interesting take on it. I work in a primarily heavily pediatric practice. And just making a full circle here, I didn't mention this earlier to you guys, but actually the reason I got into optometry is because I was in college and I read an article in the New York Times about optometry. Long story short, I read about this child who had convergence insufficiency. They were misdiagnosed by many different doctors of all different fields. And they found the right binocular specialist, optometrist. It took a binocular specialist back then to diagnose convergence deficiency, something relatively mainstream today, and got the kid the help they needed. So that got me into optometry, and I kind of went into optometry loving pediatric and binocular vision. Well, after I went, 3/4 of the way through school and then graduated, I became entirely fixated on orthokeratology and myopia control. So now at the practice that I work at, I'm in this dichotomous position where I love both, but I work with other doctors who do a lot of binocular vision, and they don't do as much myopia control. And I'm starting to see a little bit of the notion that Cheryl mentioned earlier, which, by the way, I'm a full supporter of. Don't dabble. I think there's a saying, it's a jack of all, master of none. When I feel fully capable of diagnosing and treating binocular conditions, but also myopia control. But I've realized that there's these scenarios, as Paul was mentioning earlier, where a kid comes in and you have to tease out, is this a binocular? Is this an accommodative? Is it a perceptual issue? Is it a combination of those issues? Is there other issues involved? And by the way, where does the myopia fall into this? So there's a huge decision to be made there, that initial routing the patient gets. And from my perspective, I've started to find it more beneficial for my patient's care and for my care, that even though I'm capable of treating something binocular or accommodative or developmental, I prefer to address the myopia control aspect of things. And I find the patient gets better care and I get better satisfaction if I send them to one of my colleagues within the same practice that's capable of doing good quality binocular and accommodative and perceptual workups. So, kind of getting back to answering the question, I've always seen them as in my head together because I've always loved both topics. But the more and more I look at it now, the more advanced I've become in my career, I see them as really two separate entities, and I prefer them that way. So I like what you said, Matt, about how I also personally believe, I think the Vision by Design should continue to stay separate, but to not allow dabbling. I think it's important that, if someone is all, fully invested into binocular and developmental vision, maybe they should be able to diagnose something as simple as, hey, this is a highly progressive myopic child, or there's signs here that they're going to be highly progressive. Just like I can say, okay, this is a pretty slam dunk convergence insufficiency case, and I know how I treat you, but I'm going to send you to my colleague here. I would like them to be able to come to our meeting and say, hey, this is a scenario where maybe it's a little out of my realm, but I know just the right person who can treat this, someone who is fully invested in the academy. Just like I hope for our Vision by Design Academy, we're doing the same thing with binocular issues. That's just my personal look on things, but I found a lot of retrospective insight on things that I don't know. I like them separate, but I have a lot of fascination for both. But I think ultimately it's better off if I separate them.
Gotcha. And Cheryl, do you agree with that sentiment? What is your history with
Um,
myopia and vision therapy? And maybe there's a different way that we can work together that doesn't involve the two meetings.
yeah, I thought that Jonathan really had some fantastic points, and I thought it was really very well articulated. You know, I do think that it's really important for doctors to focus on what they really want to do and get really, really good at it, so that we have, different doctors that we can go to for different needs. And I do see also what Nate is talking about, where he's wishing that the two talked more. And I think I would prefer to see Vision by Design stay mostly Vision by Design. But I think it's nice to always give people awareness to not ignore the binocular. I think a lot of doctors who are drawn to myopia management, and really, especially those who really like orthokeratology, they're not necessarily the same type of doctors who love binocular vision, mostly because I think a lot of doctors don't like binocular vision. And so I think giving them enough awareness that it is an issue, and like feeding them a little bit of information so that they know, okay, I should be checking accommodation on these kids. I should be maybe checking their lag. But giving them also the tools to not be intimidated by that, because maybe they haven't really even thought about that since they graduated 10, 15, however many years ago, to kind of revisit those topics. But I think it's also important for them to know that it is okay if you want to do orthokeratology, like Paul was saying, if you want to do orthokeratology on this kid, but then have kind of your local guy who's really, really great at binocular vision to work together, to work in concert, and address both problems. But I am definitely for Vision by Design staying more focused on soft multifocal contact lenses, orthokeratology, atropine, those sorts of things.
Gotcha. And Paul, you and I had a little bit of a discussion a couple of weeks ago about the possibility of opening up the Discord server to the VT docs that Nate is mentioning, and starting that dialogue. So what is that dialogue like? What kind of conversation do we need to have with each other moving forward?
Well, I think the best conversations that we have is how to find patients that can be helped by the other person's specialty, right? So how to be aware, what would be the best way, what would be the ideal patient for me to refer to a vision therapy doc? What would be the ideal patient for a vision therapy doc to refer to me? I think that's where the discussion should be. What components to my exam can I learn from the behavioral ODs that I should be adding that's going to help me understand a little bit better in a relatively short amount of time what kind of visual system I'm dealing with, and vice versa. Give them the tools to look at myopia a little bit differently. And so I think opening those channels is a really good thing. What I didn't mention before is that my practice, which is primary care, is it's a partnership, and my business partner is a card-carrying behavioral OD, fellow of COVD, clinical instructor for OEP. He lives and breathes vision therapy and binocular vision disorders. And he wants nothing to do with the ortho-K stuff. He refers all of it to me, and I refer all of the binocular stuff to him. It's awesome to have that, because first of all, he's in the next room, so it's really easy. But even if he were across town, it's nice to be able to support your patient in every way that they need support. And so, I think having better awareness of what each group does and can do and can offer for their patients, that's where the dialogue should be. And facilitating OD referrals is the biggest crime, that we have as an industry, is that we don't do enough of that. So that's where I see it.
Co-management system in place for, because like Jonathan pointed out, you can't do everything, right? So, we don't, as far as having a system in place to help the patient ultimately and share between the two groups. And because not everybody is going to be in your situation or in any of your situations with the different models you use or resources you have at your disposal. So in order to facilitate that process, I think we need to get that conversation started. I think I'm going to reach out to Nate and say, how can we bring these two groups together? And if we can't, maybe we have, a VT element at Vision by Design instead of combining the two meetings and vice versa. Or maybe the two organizations work together in some capacity. I mean, especially now with the pandemic, and we can't even really have in-person meetings. So maybe we need to start some sort of virtual education solution between the two. So I'm definitely going to reach out to him about that. Do we have any final words on this topic before we wrap things up?
I can add one quick comment here.
Okay.
I think both fields are pioneer thinkers in ortho-K, myopia control, and developmental vision. If you think about it, both fields really have a lot in common because we're both pushing the envelope of what we know to be scientifically proven, but also clinically effective. And so we're pushing ahead the research independently, but there's so much overlap. They're not mutually exclusive. I have so many patients who are in vision therapy who are also being treated with orthokeratology, and there's a huge benefit to have a conversation with the person who is with those two people that are treating them, because how's ortho-K, for example, and it could be multifocal soft contacts or atropine. How is it going to affect their vision therapy outcomes and their retesting? Is their exo or ESO going to increase? Is their accommodative focal point going to shift? There's a lot of fun stuff, and I think if we build on the fun positives of it, and I've noticed some people tend to get a little bit defensive about it. Well, I can treat that. I don't need to refer out. I can do this. I can take care of this. I don't know. I think if people focus on the exciting part of it, the fact that we're trying to push the envelope, we're trying to take care of the same issue, different perspectives, and how can we learn from each other? I think it could be really positive. This is a thought.